The 33rd team collected all of the rate of dropbacks with a quarterback hit in 2023. Leading the way is Tennessee Titans quarterback Will Levis with a 25.5% hit rate on dropbacks. A quarter of the time that he dropped back into coverage or dropped back to pass, he was hit by a defender. Number 2 on that list is Pittsburgh Steelers current quarterback Russell Wilson with a 20.4% hit rate. Now, to follow up on that, Justin Fields is on this list as well with a 17.5%. And then Kenny Pickett, which is a bit surprising when healthy, was only at 16.4% in 2023. Now, you could look at that and say, yeah, who cares? Last year, he was with the Denver Broncos. A surprising stat on top of that is that the Denver Broncos, according to Pro Football Focus, actually had a better pass block percentage or pass block rating, whatever they do, than the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2023, which is a bit alarming. I'm going to dive into why I think that's not a big concern, but you see that stat. I sent it to you this morning. Your first reaction, outside of the fact that if you do click on this tweet, and I think we have to share it in somewhere, but if you click on this tweet, it's like a 400, maybe 1,000 word story in a tweet. And then it's this stat. So it's like an artifact at that point, and then some good detail behind it. Before we dive into why I think that's not a big deal and why I think the Steelers are the team to correct this, I want your reaction on Russ being the second most hit quarterback in 2023. And then, according to Pro Football Focus, going to a worse offensive line.
Yeah, first and foremost, if you haven't seen that tweet, it is the Lord of the Rings of tweets. So, enjoy yourself there. It's not going to be a short time on Twitter if you're trying to read through that entire thing. But, as far as seeing Russell Wilson gets hit a lot, okay, what else is new for Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks? I mean, Kenny Pickett did it all the time in his 2 years. Ben Roethlisberger did it for 18 years in Pittsburgh. It's going to happen because these quarterbacks like to extend the play even whenever it's unnecessary. And that is frustrating a lot and sometimes completely unnecessary, but that's Russell Wilson. That's what he's done to build up what some believe and many believe is a Hall of Fame resume. So he's going to stick to what he's doing, and you're just hoping that the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line is better than that patchwork that the Denver Broncos did last year. But, at the same time, you see those stats, and I don't know how PFF does a lot of their stats. That one makes no sense to me if it's that drastic on either side of things.
Yeah, I agree. And the PFF thing, look, I'm not a PFF guy, never been a PFF guy. I'm into analytics. I like analytics. I think they're a good part of the game. I had somebody try to explain to me the PFF side of things one time, and in the process of explaining it, said that over the course of time, their community, their amount of contributors got so large that they actually lost track of exactly how things are ranked or rated. So at this point, it's almost just like being made up. It's crazy to me. It doesn't make any sense. This is why I'm not worried about Russell Wilson getting hit. So I expect Russell Wilson to be a guy who runs himself into trouble from time to time. I expect Justin Fields to be a guy who runs himself into trouble from time to time. Having Broderick Jones and hopefully Troy Fautanu helps that a ton. Having Zach Frazier helps that a ton. And obviously Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels, certainly. I think that not having a wide receiver 2 is a massive upgrade is a massive boost for Russell Wilson not running himself into trouble. And the reason I say that is because you now have to look at Pat Freiermuth much more often than you would if you had Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens. And I'm not saying that it's a blessing not to have Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens, because that would clearly be a great scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But having to rely on your tight end more is going to help that. On top of that, you're going to run the football so much that you're going to open yourself up for play action as much as any team in the NFL. And then once that gets rolling and you got guys in the box and you're able to spread guys out, George Pickens is able to do what George Pickens does. And you could bag on him or criticize how George Pickens is only good for deep balls and catching routes across the middle and taking it 60. If routes across the middle and taking it 60 is what you're good at, hey, look at that's totally fine, because those are quick passes that go a long way, and Russell Wilson's going to exceed in them. And then you have, I don't know, at this point, like 15 slot guys that are going to be utilized as slot guys, which means that Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins, Marquez Callaway, Connor Hayward, probably tossing Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris out there as well. slot guys are quick guys. Those are quick routes. Those are not deep balls. The Steelers offense is going to be designed to get the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands a lot sooner than I think the Denver Broncos offense was. And you could go back and look at that. I mean, they had a tight end, I get that, but they also had Cortland Sutton, who's a deep threat, and Jerry Jeudy, who's a deep threat, on top of Tim Patrick, who's a deep threat, and Lil Jordan Humphreys, who's a deep threat. The Steelers don't have any deep threats outside of just George Pickens and I guess Van Jefferson, but I don't expect him to be a 700-800 yard receiver. I expect him to be a 200-300 yard receiver. And if that's all you're utilizing him for, it's fine. I don't see that being an issue for the Steelers. I don't see the sack rate being as big of an issue for the Steelers. I think that they'll settle it down. And I also think that Arthur Smith's not going to want his quarterback to be in trouble. So they will utilize quick routes and that kind of stuff. The Steelers offense is going to be meticulous this season. That's my prediction when it comes to Russell Wilson and how they're looking.
Yeah, I think meticulous is the perfect word for it, because you look at what the Steelers want to do from day one when they got into camp. Everybody's saying, oh, we're going to be a physical team. And that was rookie camp. That Arthur Smith was looking at his new offensive lineman, the first rounder and the second rounder, and saying, you two are going to be massive this year because all we're going to do is punch people in the mouth. And that is exactly what the Steelers are going to do. And if they do it to a successful clip, the amount of times Russell Wilson drops back is going to be limited anyway. So, I agree with you. I do think that if they're able to execute the game plan that Arthur Smith wants, it's going to keep Russell Wilson off the ground.
Yeah, I don't have any worries about Russ being a sack-heavy quarterback. And if he is, you got Justin Fields. And I can tell you this, watching OTAs and minicamp, Justin Fields, he probably does get sacked a lot. He probably avoids 80% of those sacks just because nobody moves like Justin Fields moves. So I think they'll be totally fine. And again, the Steelers did this well last year with a bad offensive coordinator and a quarterback that ran himself into trouble equally as much almost as Russell Wilson.